mode.
All right, everybody. Welcome to this extra special bonus session for all of our international Amazon sellers out there. Guys, today we are finally going to demystify so many of the crazy, confusing parts of starting an Amazon business from outside of the U.S. for our non-U.S. sellers. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today, talking about business structures, the difference between, LLCs and sole proprietorships and all these crazy terms. We're going to demystify all of them today. Also talk about how you can just stay legal with your company, minimize taxes, and just navigate this whole topsy-turvy world of the legality for international Amazon sellers. As you guys will see, it's very, very simple, but there's just a lot of big words and things like that to understand. So today we have Reed Larson in from FBA Prep. He's one of the co-owners at FBA Prep, and just an incredible background. Reed has been in so many different industries and really dominated in quite a few of those industries. Saw firsthand a lot of the economic shifts that have happened over the past 10, 15 years, and has gone from industries like producing gold and silver to real estate to now e-commerce. So always kind of following the trend and going where the money's at, and really, really good at taking advantage of those opportunities. So Reed helps a ton of people at FBA Prep, a ton of international sellers, actually get the legality of this business set up properly the first time. Also has some really, really cool hacks. I think you guys are going to love ways to get bank accounts and all sorts of fun stuff. So guys, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Reed Larson. He's going to be going through this presentation for about 30, 45 minutes. It's going to be a pretty interactive presentation, guys. So keep the back and forth going. Get ready to answer in the question box. And then obviously Steve and I will be in the question box as well, answering questions while Reed is presenting as well. So Reed, once again, thanks a lot for being here, man. We're really looking forward to seeing this information today.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I appreciate the great intro. And, I just want to hit something head up here straight. First of all, this is a boring topic, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that say, oh, taxes, yawn, business setup. How boring. I want to spend my time figuring out how to sell on Amazon, or I want to spend my time figuring out how to do that next Facebook funnel, or I got to get my Shopify store going, or whatever they're doing online. But the things we're going to talk about today are in direct relation to your business, going to make more of a difference for your business in the future of your business and the income, bottom line income that you get out of your business than many of the other things that you could be doing. I mean, this is important. This is the type of stuff that, even though it may be boring, it's stuff that you really need to spend a few minutes thinking about. You don't need to spend a whole year thinking about it, but just a few minutes at the beginning, or if you already are up and selling on Amazon, then maybe make a few adjustments along the way to make sure that you're set up optimally, right? And when I say optimally, I mean we're trying to accomplish some certain goals with your business structure related to taxes and liability protection, things like that. We're going to talk about that. I do have a question, though, and I'd love for you to just put into the question box. How many of you are selling currently on Amazon.com? Just put a 1 in there if that's a yes. I'm selling on Amazon.com. Put a 2 in there if you're not. Just kind of show me lots of 1s coming in. There's a 2, a couple of 2s, some 1s. Oh, there's a bunch more 2s, some 1s, a bunch more 1s. Okay, awesome. Keep it coming. This gives me a pretty good idea. We're about half and half. Will, wouldn't you say? I mean, what you're seeing there?
Exactly half and half, amazingly enough.
Now, I'm already getting some questions like, here's a question that just came in. Would you recommend setting up a subsidiary in a tax haven? Panama, the Cook Islands, whatever. Should I register IP rights there, charge royalties, and charge for stuff like product research? I mean, okay. Those are some awesome questions, and we're going to get there. Okay, we're going to get to talking about taxes. We're going to get to talking about the corporate structures and so forth. But I got to tell you up front that everyone's situation is unique. I mean, your personal tax situation is different than mine. You might be inside the United States, you might be outside the United States. And by the way, the stuff we're going to talk about today is applicable to you whether you're inside the United States or not. Okay? Almost everything we talk about today is going to matter to you if you are in New York or Florida or California or Missouri or wherever you are inside the United States, if you live and work here, and I'm coming to you, by the way, from Idaho. Beautiful state, lots of snow outside today, it's wonderful. But many of you on this special presentation are coming to us from all over the world, and I know we have dealt with and helped many clients from all over the world, the EU, the UK areas, obviously Australia, New Zealand, places like Taiwan, Japan, and so forth, and even had clients in like Dubai and Israel and other places in the East, the Middle East, and so forth, all over the world, Canada, Mexico, of course, South America. It all applies, no matter where you are, the things that we're going to talk about. So, without further ado, I would like to tell you what I'm not going to tell you. All right? This is an important thing. What am I not going to tell you? I am not going to tell you to go set up an LLC. All right? I'm not going to tell you that you have to go do this or that you have to go that. You are hopefully at the end of this webinar going to have a better idea of what your options are and what the pros and the cons are and what you are required to do. But it's up to you. You know, none of this matters if you don't do anything, by the way, so I'm hoping that you're going to take a few notes. Maybe we'll, I don't know, are you going to make this video available to everyone afterward to go back and review?
Yep, absolutely. That is the plan. Unless you have any, you know, unless you're doing something secretive. If there is some type of secret information that we show today, I can always edit that out for the replay too.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll keep that in mind as we go forward. I think we do want to probably do a replay of this, or at least have the recording available, because I'm going to cover a lot of ground kind of in a hurry, and want to make sure that at the end of the day that you can go back and have a look at it. Probably I'd almost rather you do that than sit and take notes until the very end. Maybe you can write down a few things that come to you that maybe you want to do. All right, so I'm not going to tell you a bunch of stuff, but I am going to tell you the bad news first. All right? The bad news is the IRS. All right? The IRS says that you have to pay taxes. Now, the IRS is the Internal Revenue Service. For those of you outside of the United States, the Internal Revenue Service is the federal government for the United States. It's their tax collection agency. And of those three words, tax collection agency, two of them are collection agency. And if you know what that means, you know exactly what they do. It's their job to pry as much money out of you as possible, and it's your job to pay as little as possible within the bounds of the law. You have a moral and legal obligation to pay as little as possible, and they are going to be the other end of that. Okay? So what I want to do is just show you, if you can see this in the screen, the IRS's view of things. The IRS's view is that non-resident aliens, okay, have to pay taxes inside the United States. And when I say non-resident alien, I don't just mean individuals, okay, but if you are a non-resident alien, that doesn't mean you're from Mars. That just means you don't live and work inside the United States. Engaged or considered to be engaged in a trade or business in the United States during the year, you must file a tax return. However, this is one exemption. If your only U.S. source income is wages in an amount less than the personal exemption amount, which for most people is in the ballpark of $5,000 or $6,000, then you don't have to file. This is going to answer one of the big questions that I get all the time as I'm helping people to figure out what the structure should be, the taxation should be, and how to put it all together so that they get their bookkeeping done right, they get their books set up correctly, and everything done so they stay legal inside the United States. Okay? One of the big questions is, how much can I make before I have to pay taxes inside the United States? And the answer is, well, not very much. It's a complicated answer, though. In general, in general you would think it's simple, but it's a complicated answer because it does depend on the type of tax return, the type of income, the type of business, and so forth. We're going to limit our scope today to only discuss the Amazon business and businesses like it, okay? If you're selling on eBay, if you're selling on jet.com, selling on Etsy, if you're selling, any of these platforms, what we talk about today is going to apply, all right? I just wanted to give you this link so that those of you that are outside the United States, many of you think that you don't have to pay income tax inside the United States because, after all, you live in the UK, right? If you live in the UK, and let's say you have a UK limited company set up, and your company is in the UK, then, you might be thinking, when I went into Amazon and I set up my business, I was not asked for tax information because I said I was a foreign person, an alien, non-resident, and so they didn't ask me for a tax ID number, so I got away with it. I didn't have to send anything to Amazon about taxes, and they're not going to worry about it for me, so I got away with it. Well, actually, what happens is you are still responsible to pay tax inside the United States, and if you fail to do that, they can still come after your business, your inventory. They can lien your bank accounts. They can do whatever they want. They are a collection agency and the most powerful collection agency in the country. But beyond that, you're still going to end up having to pay taxes inside of your home country. And for many of you who are outside the United States, the trick is to figure out how to minimize taxes inside the U.S. and minimize taxes in your home jurisdiction, right? You can see this slide right here, and that's really a very important subject, and it's something that is going to vary based on your country. Now let me tell you how and why it varies. Taxation in your home jurisdiction versus taxation in the United States is governed by tax treaties. Almost all major countries in the world, when I say major, I mean those that are involved in world commerce of one kind or another, almost all of them have some sort of tax treaty with the United States. Most of them do. So chances are you live in a country that does. And so how the taxes are handled is managed by that tax treaty. That tax treaty then governs how you handle it. Now, let me just cut to the chase on that for a moment. For most of you, what's going to be the case is this. The treaty says that if you pay tax inside the United States, either as a business or personally, depending on the treaty, that you can deduct those taxes from your tax returns or filings in your home jurisdiction. So if you paid $10,000 in taxes in the U.S., you get credit for that $10,000 in your home jurisdiction. Okay? Those kinds of tax treaties are things that you need to understand, and it's going to be different for every country, so it's something that you should ask your local tax advisor, whatever country you're in. Now, if you are in the United States living here, or if your business is here, and you don't have to worry about tax treaties and taxation in your home jurisdiction, then the rest of the seminar is still going to apply to you. So don't go away. Just sit tight for just a minute, and I just want to address those that are outside the U.S. for just another minute here. When you look around and find a tax preparer or a tax specialist of one kind or another in your country, you need to find somebody that is familiar with the ins and outs of tax treaties, or at least taxation inside the U.S. versus taxation in your home jurisdiction. That's really critical. Okay? If you haven't done that yet, and you're in your first year of selling on Amazon, you probably ought to at least ask the question of your tax person. Are you familiar with these things? Are you familiar with international tax matters? Are you familiar with what happens if I sell in the United States and I have to pay tax there? Because if you sell in the U.S., you will be subject to, having to pay tax there on profits at least. So at the end of the day, that's something that you should ask for. Now, as I go here, we will be answering questions in the background, and I appreciate, Will, I know you're typing away there in the background answering questions as they come up, but I will take questions at the end. So if you do run across a question that I do not address in the middle of this seminar, in the flow of it, then I'm happy to answer those at the end. I will probably also stop once in a while and ask my own questions. And that is what I want to do right now. So I just want to put a 1 in the box in the question box if you are residing outside the United States, and a 2 if you reside inside the United States. I'd just kind of like to know what the mix is here. If you're outside the United States, put a 1. Inside the United States is a 2. Almost all ones. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Holy cow. Okay, so we have only a few.
It looks like our targeting worked well here.
Yes, nice job, Will. Now somebody put a 7 in there. Lucas, I'm not sure what country that is, but maybe you meant something else there. Okay, so and Steve, yeah, thanks for your comment. Nobody else has told us all this information. Yeah, you know, you don't really learn this in college or school, you know, unless you're really going to be an accountant inside the United States and dealing specifically with tax matters and get some business under your belt. I've been in business for approximately 25 years. I've run all different kinds of businesses, big and small. I've dealt with C corporations, S corporations, limited liability companies, sole proprietorships, joint partnerships, partnerships of various kinds, joint ventures, all the different business structures. I have personal experience with these, not just from tax matters, but from the practicality of running the business. And so that's what I'm hoping to be able to share with you today, is some of the experience that I've personally had. Keep in mind, this is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a CPA. I don't prepare tax returns for a living, but I do run businesses that have to abide by these rules, and so I'm familiar with those. So anyway, one thing to be aware of is that before you do anything, you really should consult with your own tax professionals, or you can contact FBA Prep, and I'll show you how to do that at the end. And you can contact our tax professionals as well, and get the answers that you're in need of based on your own situation. All right. So having said all the above, let's dive in. I'm going to move kind of fast. What we want to do here, as you can see on the screen, is minimize taxes in the USA, minimize taxes in your home jurisdiction, maximize liability protection, and do not underestimate the importance of that. If some kid takes your product and it breaks and injures the kid or kills him, what happens in the United States? You know, we're a very litigious society. That means litigation. That means that the company will be sued. And the question about liability protection is, if somebody sues the company and wins and obtains a judgment, then will they be able to take that judgment and go to you personally and make you pay the multi-million-dollar judgment? Or does the company protect you from that? Okay? If the company protects you from those kinds of things, then we call that liability protection. All right? To facilitate the transfer of assets in the case of sale of the company or your death. Have you thought about this? I mean, why are you building the business in the first place? Do you plan to sell it? Most people, hopefully, are building this business in order to sell it, right? The bottom line is that if you are going to sell it, that you've got to have it set up right, or a buyer just isn't going to be interested. And when I say right, I mean, you're going to see what I mean here specifically, but I mean set up in a way where it's compartmentalized. You don't have funds that are commingled. You're not using your personal bank account to fund the business. The business isn't in your name, your social security number, or your personal tax ID number. If you're outside the United States, you can get a tax ID number inside the United States. It's called an ITIN, an International Tax ID number, and it's the equivalent of a social security number inside the U.S. You can get the number, but the number doesn't protect you from anything, right? If the business is in your personal name, if the assets are in your personal name, if you're commingling business funds with personal funds and so forth, that makes it very difficult to sell the business, particularly if you have multiple businesses. A lot of people do, or multiple lines of business within your company. A lot of people have that too. They might be selling on Shopify and Amazon. They might be selling on Jet.com or Etsy or something on the side. They might have their own websites, and they're building Facebook funnels and going crazy with AdWords and whatever else. Bottom line, if you have lots of lines of business and you plan to sell one of them, or what if you build up one brand and you plan to sell only that brand? You got to think about all that in advance so that you can set up the business in the best way to make sure that the transfer of assets happens cleanly. All right? So that's what we're going to really get into here. Question. When I sell on Amazon, do I need an LLC or corporation? And the answer is, well, no. You don't need an LLC. You don't need a corporation. I had one gentleman in Canada say, tell me on Facebook, I hope you're not going to tell me that I need to open an LLC in the U.S. to sell on Amazon, because he's in Canada, right? No, I'm not going to tell you need to do that. I am going to tell you that the business has to pay taxes in the U.S., and I'm going to tell you what happens if you don't file an LLC or a corporation or something to hold that business or to run that business inside the United States. Certainly you don't have to, but you should know what will happen if you do or if you don't. I'm going to talk about how to avoid double taxation, what tax returns you need to file, and we already talked about a little bit about how much can I sell before I need to file a tax return. The answer is, if you have a profit of less than $4,000 or $5,000 and you're filing a personal tax return in the United States, and we'll get into why you would do that, then you don't need to file, okay, generally. But I don't know any of you that want to get into this business and only make a profit of $4,000. I would almost ask the question, hey, you know, go and answer the question. How many of you want to make only $4,000 or less on your Amazon business? And it'd probably get crickets, right? Because that's not why we're in business. We want to do better than that, don't we? We want to make $10,000 a month, $100,000 a month. We have clients that are making $1 million a month or more. So begin with the end in mind. Start by looking at what you're going to want to do, what your goal is, and let's work backwards from there regarding tax and corporation type issues. So I want to give you the reasons why you probably will want to formally organize your business inside the United States, whether you're in the U.S. or whether you're out. Liability protection. Remember, if you own something, that's liability. Ownership is liability. What you want is control. Okay? Control is what you want. And when you set up a corporation or a company of some kind, you control the company, but the company owns the stuff. It's almost like a robot. You know, you have a robot that you control, and you can make the robot sign something. You make the robot send a wire to China. You can have the robot receive products and own them and then send them into Amazon. You can have the robot do all these things for you, and you just control the robot. You control it, but you are not liable. If the robot does something wrong and the robot gets sued, well, the robot is something you can sacrifice to protect yourself. That's what liability protection really comes down to. There's also organization and separation of the funds, the bank account, the EIN, which is an employer identification number. It's the business version of a Social Security number inside the United States, of course. It is a tax ID number, is also referred to as a tax ID or a tax ID number. It's an EIN. Okay? Financial statements, credit. Yeah, I mean, if you don't separate your personal from your business, how are you going to get your business to go borrow money? What if you want to expand? Okay, you're going to walk into your bank and they're going to say, well, give me the financials of your business. And you're going to, well, you know, here's my personal bank account. Here, let me circle the items in my personal bank account that are the business items, and you sit down and figure out what that is. Your bank will laugh you out the door. It's got to be separated. It's got to be compartmentalized. You've got to have your business stuff in one place and your personal stuff in another. And this is another reason to formally organize your business. I don't know if you've thought about borrowing money to expand, but sources of capital are very important. Whether you're borrowing money from a bank, whether you're borrowing money from friends, family, whatever it is, you've got to have this done right. And there's also financial benefits, of course, to think about. Taxes is just one of the financial benefits. What about expenses, perks? What about the corporate lifestyle? Okay? From this expenses standpoint, what can you write off? Can you write off this dinner? Can you write off this business trip? Do I have to, you know, pay taxes on this or that? What about a computer? If I buy a computer, how is that handled? What about perks? Can the company buy things for me? Can the company send me on trips? Can I have the corporate lifestyle? You know, those are all things to discuss. Succession plan, of course, we already talked about selling the business or passing it on to your spouse or children. that is also a reason to formally organize, because if you are suddenly out of the picture, either because you sold it or because you got hit by a bus, then you should have something set up there for your spouse, your children, whoever's going to take over for you. And a corporation or LLC or some other structure is a great way to do that. Whereas if everything's in your personal name, then it's a very difficult thing. You certainly don't want to leave the people that you love and care about in your life. You don't want to leave them holding the bag of your disorganized and not properly set up business, right? So the main question, do I need an LLC or corporation? I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of 5 different corporate structures, okay? This is in the United States, 5 different corporate or business structures are common, okay? And outside the United States, there are similar versions of this. There are corporations and partnerships, there are limited companies and so forth. So you're probably going to find something very similar in your country. But this is going to be important for you because you need to decide what type of structure you need inside the United States based on what you're going to do with your business. Okay? So we're going to talk about these 5 starting now. Sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation. There are 2 flavors of corporation, C Corp or S Corp. Joint ventures, and limited liability companies. Okay? Now, let's first talk about the sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship is a business where you are considered self-employed. Okay? You run the business. Everything's in your business name, your personal social security number or your personal name or whatever. Okay? That is a sole proprietorship. You get no liability protection from a sole proprietorship. If you produce a product that maims someone or kills them, you are personally responsible. If you own a home, they can sue you, get a judgment, and try and attach the judgment to your home and take your house, your car, your bank accounts. They can attach your bank accounts and sweep them from time to time. They can send you to collections. You can get chased by lawyers and everything else. I mean, you are on the line. You have maximum exposure under this. You are personally responsible for company debts. So if the business needs to borrow money, you personally pay it back whether the business fails or not. You pay the highest tax brackets inside the United States. Okay? You pay, in addition to federal and state income tax, for those of you that live in states that have income tax, which is most of them. In addition to that, you also have to pay an additional 15.3% self-employment tax on top of the federal and state income tax, which means that a typical person that's self-employed pays more than 50% of their income in taxes inside the United States. This is because your sole proprietorship is considered to be a disregarded entity by the IRS. That means that IRS does not recognize the business as being a business. They recognize it as being you. It's an extension of you. It's just you. So you're personally reliable or responsible. You're personally liable. You are self-employed, and therefore you pay the self-employment tax. You do not get to write off expenses nearly to the latitude that you get in corporations and other structures, and unfortunately this is what most people do. I don't know why, maybe because they don't know better, but by the end of this, hopefully, you're going to know better. I'm getting a question from somebody saying the whole seminar is based on registering a company inside the USA. Yes, this is about selling on Amazon.com, not Amazon.UK, FR, DE, JP, MX, or CA, or any other places. This is inside the United States. If you are interested in a seminar about setting things up for, like, let's say you want to do business in Hong Kong, or you want to do business on the Isle of Man or something, that would be a different webinar, and it would not be related to selling on Amazon.com, unfortunately. So just thought I'd pick that question off real quick. So sole proprietorship, unfortunately, that's what most people do. It's the worst possible business structure. Okay? Don't do it. Here's the thing, though. If you personally live, like, let's say you live in the UK, and you set up an Amazon.com account and you start selling, and you don't have a company in the UK, and you don't have a company in the US, then you will have to file a personal tax return inside the United States every year to cover the business, just the income, the cost of goods sold, and the expenses related to your business inside the United States. That personal tax return will include all of the income and expenses and cost of goods related to your business on what they call Schedule C. It's a part of the tax return. It's a schedule. That Schedule C is self-employment, and that's why you'll pay self-employment taxes, because that's where all the business activity is recognized and sent into the IRS. So if you are doing that, then you may want to think about the consequences of that. Okay? You may want to take a look at what we're going to talk about next. All right, limited partnership is the next entity. Partnerships are widely recognized, not just in the United States, but elsewhere, of course. It's two or more entities. There's usually one partner or sometimes both that run it. If you have limited partnerships, then they don't have any say in the management, but they do have liability limited. They are not liable for the activities of the partnership. The partnership files a certain type of tax return known as a 1065 partnership return, which means that instead of a personal tax return, the business files its own tax return. And the business does not pay taxes. Unlike a sole proprietorship, which does pay taxes on your personal return, a limited partnership or a partnership does not pay taxes directly. What happens is, let's say that you're a partner and you own 50% of the business, and let's say that you have a business partner that is the other 50%. Then at the end of the year, if that business made 100 grand or something, then the business will pay, will recognize that on a tax return that says, okay, the company made 100 grand, and you as a partner, you are responsible to pay taxes on 50%, so $50,000. Now, when I say you are responsible, I mean you are personally responsible. So you would therefore file a personal tax return inside the United States. The partnership would file the 1065 tax return and generate a form called a K-1 that will indicate how much money you are responsible to pay taxes on. That will be given to you, and then you will recognize that on Schedule E, like Edward, Schedule E of your personal tax return inside the U.S. So what that means ultimately is you will end up, claiming $50,000 if you're a 50% owner in a business that had a net profit of $100,000 during that tax year. Here's the funny part about partnerships, okay? This is something that I want you all to pay attention. If you've been snoozing, take a drink of your Coke or whatever you got to do to wake up for just a minute. What we want to tell you is this. The amount that you are responsible for as a partner in terms of a percentage of the profit is totally irrelevant to the amount of money you take out of the business. Doesn't matter how much you take out of the business. If the business declares a profit of $100,000 and it keeps all the money and it reinvests it in more product and stuff like that, well, who pays, how much do you pay? You pay taxes on the profit, not on how much you got. If the company doesn't give you, if the partnership doesn't give you any money, you still have to pay taxes on the $50,000 that you're responsible for, and so you got to come out of pocket and pay that money. The flip side of that is, what if the business claims a profit of $100,000 and you're responsible for 50% of it as a 50% partner? Then you pay tax on $50,000. But what if you took $1 million out of the business? Okay, you took $1 million out of the business, but you only pay taxes on $50,000 because that's the profit. All right, we call that pass-through taxation. Pass-through. The partnership doesn't pay it, you do, and you only pay tax on what you're responsible for, regardless of how much money you took out. This avoids double taxation. Okay? Now, the nice thing about a limited partnership is there's not much organizational requirement. You don't have to hold a bunch of meetings. You can just file it once, and as long as you file your annual report to the state every year, and you have a resident agent, a registered agent in the state, it's usually a lawyer that usually charges $100 or $200 a year to be your agent in the state that you're organized in. So if you organize in Wyoming, for example, you'll have a registered agent in Wyoming. As long as you maintain the registered agent, pay the fee, and then you pay the fee to maintain the registration of your business by filing an annual report every year, that partnership remains in force and you're not required to do much else. Very easy to maintain, okay? Now, we're going to contrast that with the next business structure. Now remember, we talked about different business structures here. Sole proprietorship and partnership we've covered. I'm going to talk about corporations now. There are two kinds of corporations, a C Corp and an S Corp. C Corp is for large companies generally, but it works for small companies. S Corps are for small companies only. And the unfortunate thing about an S Corp, for those of you who live outside of the United States, is that you are not eligible to own an S Corp. You're not eligible to have what they call sub-S status, small corporation status. So that takes one of these options off the table for you. You're going to have to look at the rest of these options. I'm still going to cover S Corps briefly, but for those of you outside the country, we're going to focus on C Corp for just a minute. A C Corp does have double taxation potential, and I'm going to show you how. A corporation itself declares a profit and pays taxes. So let's say that it had a $50,000 profit, okay? At the end of the year, you declare, okay, we had $1 million in sales, we had $950,000 in expenses, we have a $50,000 profit. Boom. The company will pay 15% of that to the IRS, federal tax, $7,500. Plus, if the company is in a state that has income tax, then the company will also pay state income tax. Let's assume for a minute that you're smart and you set up in Wyoming where there's no state income tax, so all you would owe, all the company would owe is $7,500 federal tax. Okay. If that's the case, then at the end of it, if you want to pull money out of that $50,000 profit after $7,500 in taxes that you've already paid, which leaves you $42,500 in money left, you can take that $42,500 out, but then you have to pay personal income tax on it. Okay? The personal income tax is then being paid on money that you've already paid taxes on at the corporate level. So that's why we call it double taxation. Okay? We call that a dividend when you pull money out of the company. Now, you can get money out of the company by paying yourself a salary, which would not be double taxed, but then you do have to pay Social Security tax, Medicare, Medicaid tax, unemployment, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of stuff that comes on that. So you still end up getting, taxed substantially on that when you pay yourself a salary. So these are all things to discuss. What's the best way to get money out of a C corporation, right? It is to have it be an expense. So if you have a business in the UK and the business is managing a corporation in the US, then what you could do is you could set up a C corporation and have this, if the C corporation is going to make a $50,000 profit, you could have the UK company bill the US company for $40,000 of management fees and maybe $5,000 of some other miscellaneous expenses and do some reimbursements and end up eating up all that profit so that you end up declaring a profit of zero in the US. And then when the company, the C Corp, pays the bill, means sends the money to your UK company, then your UK limited company will have income and then you will pay taxes on that income in the UK. So you've basically moved the profit from one company in one jurisdiction to another company in another jurisdiction. Now, as a C Corp, you can do things like this. Of course, you're going to want to talk with your tax advisor to determine what's appropriate, what's reasonable, and how to do that. But what I'm trying to point out to you is that a corporation has wide latitude in what it can deduct, and so the goal would be to get the profit down as close to zero as possible. You do have to have an annual board meeting. You do have to have meetings of shareholders and boards of directors. You have to have officers, but it does provide very strong liability protection, and these are all things to consider for a C corporation. Now, I want to just tell you what an S corporation is. It's very much like a C corporation, but it does not declare a profit. It does not pay taxes. It actually is taxed very similarly to a partnership. It's passed through, like what we talked about before. Okay, so When we talk about a pass-through taxation situation, that assumes, of course, that you're filing a personal income tax return in the United States. So you can have an S-Corp that files an 1120 tax return, pass through the profits to your personal so that the corporation does not pay taxes. So if you had a $50,000 profit like what we had in the C-Corp example, then all $50,000 will pass through to your personal tax return, or pro rata with you and your partners, depending on how many shareholders are in the company, right? So at the end of the day, you file a tax return and you pay income tax on whatever the profit of the corporation is. And again, you have wide latitude in writing that off, writing it down, getting as close to zero as possible, so that you can hopefully avoid having to file a personal tax return. Okay? You can read down through the rest of the slide there, but much of the same thing applies. You have to have shareholder meetings, annual director meeting, annual board meeting. You can only have 50 shareholders, but again, those of you who are outside the United States, this particular option is not open to you. Okay? All right, now I need to back up for just a second and tell you something that I purposely skipped. When we're talking about an LLC or a corporation, there's a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation. Those three are the types of entities that the IRS deals with. Okay? The IRS does not recognize a joint venture or a limited liability company as anything. Limited liability companies are a relatively new thing inside the United States, and as such, they don't have their own part of the tax code. So what they have is the ability to be a chameleon. They can become a sole proprietorship, they can become a partnership, or they can become a corporation for tax purposes. It's a limited liability company, but the question is, how do you want it to be taxed? All right? A joint venture is nothing but an agreement between entities, like two partnerships, or a corporation and a partnership, or an LLC and a sole proprietorship, or whatever. They come together and they do business together. Joint venture is not a business structure. Okay? A joint venture is a loose agreement to work together and share profits and loss. There's almost no liability protection. Okay? It generally results in commingled funds because, let's say you and I decide to do a joint venture. All right, fine. Who's going to pay for the product? Right? If I pay for the product out of my personal bank account, and you pay for some product out of your personal bank account, we're both commingling funds. We're putting our personal assets into this. And it generally is a problem when you do that. Okay? You have all kinds of accounting challenges that come up. And by the way, all of the participants in the JV become liable and responsible for the activities of the other participants, which means that if you have a joint venture and your joint venture partner does something horrible and despicable and wrong, well, you can be held liable for that. Okay? We call that blowback liability, and it's ugly, and you don't want any part of that. So I would not recommend a joint venture, and I would not recommend a sole proprietorship. Let's look at limited liability company. Most of you on this webinar, if you're still with us, not asleep. If you are asleep, then boop, 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 wake up. This is the part you've been waiting for. This is the limited liability company. All right? The way that it's formed is by creating articles of organization in an operating agreement. And here's the thing. Now that I've told you all about these other structures, you're going to understand this slide. It gets the tax benefits of an S-Corp or a partnership, which means you can decide whether you want it to be a corporation or a partnership. Whichever tax benefits or tax status is better for you, your company, or yourself as you do business outside, living outside the United States, but do business in the United States. You get the liability protection of a corporation. You get no double taxation. You don't have to have meetings. The managers run it. The members own it, and it's simple and easy to maintain. Okay? Different states do have different laws. Wyoming, Nevada, Delaware, and New Mexico are the 4 best places in the U.S. for various reasons, according to most experts and according to me. Wyoming being the best for liability protection, Nevada the best for what used to be the best for privacy, it's not really anymore, Delaware the best for business law, and New Mexico for secrecy if you don't want anybody to know who owns it. But there's some certain limitations to each, and so what you need to decide is, based on what your needs are, your need for liability protection, your need for asset protection, your need for succession in your business so you can sell it or so it can be passed on to your children or whatever, that and tax matters will indicate to you which state you want to organize in, if you're going to organize at all. Okay? All right. Now, believe it or not, we're almost done. The question is, which structure should I use in my situation? So I want to go through a couple of common structures and setups that we get from time to time at FBA Prep. When we have people outside the United States that are selling on Amazon.com, they know they need to file a tax return. They're trying to figure out which kind. We say to them, well, do you want to do it as a sole proprietorship or a partnership or a corporation? Now here's where I'm going to interject something very interesting to those of you that have a UK company or an EU company, or you're an Australian company, or some other company, and you're doing business in the United States, instead of you personally. Your company can file a corporate tax return at an 1120, a corporate tax return in the United States as a corporation, specifically for the business that was conducted there. You can apply for and receive an EIN, and you can file, your business can file a tax return in the U.S. You don't need to have an actual structure in the U.S. You can still file a tax return without the structure because the structure might exist in the U.K., for example. All right? So people say, well, how, you know, I've got my UK company set up or my Canadian company. How do I file taxes in the U.S.? Well, the answer is you file as a corporation. Your corporation or your company files as a corporation in the U.S. Now, what about if you are doing business personally in a country outside the United States? Well, then you'd have to file a personal tax return in the U.S. And if you decided, for example, to set up an LLC inside the United States, for any number of reasons, that might be a very good idea. Well, then you will probably also have to file a personal tax return in the U.S. to recognize the income that derives from the LLC, your percentage of the profits. If the company made $100,000 and you get $50,000 of it, then you got to file a personal return to recognize and pay tax on that $50,000. Okay? So what are the advantages and disadvantages of each from a tax perspective? Obviously, the C corporation is excellent, but it gets double taxed. It's excellent in certain circumstances where you can write the profits down to zero. It's the best. But an LLC is excellent from the tax perspective, particularly if you are looking for pass-through. If you want pass-through income without getting subject to double taxation, then an LLC is better. From an asset protection perspective, a C corporation is the best, but an LLC is a very close second. From an estate planning and succession planning perspective, an LLC and a C corporation are about the same, but an LLC is easier. So that's, you know, got a big gold star next to it. And overall, you got to balance all these things: tax, asset protection, and estate planning and succession planning. Now, particularly if you're going to sell your business, having an S corporation, if you live inside the U.S., or if all of the shareholders live inside the U.S., I should say, or having a C corporation is usually the best. An LLC is like right behind it, barely, you know, almost as good for selling your business, because it can have its own bank account, its own credit, its own address, its own set of books, its own inventory. It owns everything. It has its own insurance, and it is an entity by itself. If you are planning to sell your business, please consider setting up some kind of structure inside the United States is best, particularly if you plan to sell the U.S. part of your business. What if you have a brand? This is another question that we get a lot. What if I have a brand, okay? I've got a line of business. If you have a line of business and you are looking potentially to sell only that line of business, what you can do is set up a C corporation, okay, in the U.S., and then you can set up an LLC that the C corporation owns. The LLC can be sold in the future. So if the LLC has that one line of business, and then if you have other lines of business, you put them under other LLCs, the LLCs can be owned by the C corporation, and if they're wholly owned by the C corporation, then the LLC doesn't even have to file a tax return. It just is a way to compartmentalize the business. So that's an example of a business, an LLC that's wholly owned by a C Corp, where you can have the LLC set up but not have to even file a tax return for it. You just set up the business, run the LLC as its own entity, and in the future you can go sell it. But you're going to recognize all the income and expenses and cost of goods from that LLC's business activities inside the United States. You're going to recognize that in the C Corporation's tax return. So you can file one tax return but have 5 different businesses, for example. So those are, we get a lot of structure questions. We get a lot of questions about what should I do if I'm in another country and I have no corporation then or business setup. Then what kind of structure should I use inside the United States? Well, there are pros and cons, and we should discuss that, or you should discuss it with your tax professional or with your bookkeeper. And the other thing is, if you have a company that you already own outside the U.S. and you want to do business in the U.S., you should make the decision, do you want to file a structure in the U.S. or do you just want to file an 1120 corporate tax return in the U.S.? And then thirdly, you might want to say, well, even if I have a corporation or a business inside another country, maybe I still want to have a structure inside the U.S. because at some point I want to sell the business. I definitely want to compartmentalize. I want asset protection. I want succession plan. I need some of those benefits, the corporate lifestyle, the perks. I want to be able to travel to the United States and have the business pay for it, for example. Those kinds of things. The bottom line is they are all questions that you need to be asking. And we've covered a lot of the answers here, but again, it's going to be unique to you. So if it is unique to you and you want potentially to set up a structure, how and where should you set it up? What state should you set it up? What type of structure? How do you set it up? Who do you talk to? And so forth. So I would recommend, of course, that you come and talk to us at FBA Prep. We have a legal staff, a lawyer on staff that will help make some of those decisions and who actually files corporations and LLCs as needed for our clients. And the big question that I teased you with at the beginning, how do I get a U.S. bank account for the business? Now, I know a lot of you are probably interested in trying to figure this out. In fact, let's find out. And I see that there are still, in fact, there's more people on this webinar now than when we started. So we've picked up steam even. That's awesome. You guys have been troopers and hanging in there. I want to tell you how to get a U.S. bank account for the business without flying to the United States. Because as you're probably aware, if you've tried to get a bank account in the U.S., they require you to appear in person with your passport to set that up. So I want to know, just put a 1 in the box, in the question box, if you want to know how to get a bank account in the U.S. for your business. Just stick a 1 in there. We're seeing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Oh, yeah, they're flowing in here. Well, somebody also said, is your CPA going to be offering an e-commerce empire discount? Actually, you know what? We have an entire package that we've put together for bookkeeping, and then we have a package for our CPA. We have 11 CPAs in a third-party company. It's a separate company that's a CPA firm that's been around a while, and they're very good at what they do, and we just simply contract with them to handle the tax returns for our clients. And we also have a bookkeeping company that's been around since 1959, and they handle the books for our own businesses, and we've made them available to handle bookkeeping for any of your businesses if you're interested in that.
Yeah, and someone just asked me in the question box, this confirms the need for a CPA. I absolutely think, almost every situation I've ever asked the CPA for advice, they're almost always profitable. So I definitely think it's a good decision to get advice from a CPA. The one thing you got to look out for is make sure that they have experience with your business. I've worked with a lot of CPAs, especially in Amazon and e-commerce, foreign-owned e-commerce businesses. You don't want to pay for the CPA to go out there and learn how to handle your business. Find a CPA firm, whether it's doing it through FBA Prep and using the CPAs that we've been training for years. Either use them or use a CPA that has that foreign-owned e-commerce experience, because I think any CPA can do this stuff. The weird technicalities come with this business model, these newer business models. So just make sure you have a CPA that has worked with similar businesses in the past, and I think you'll be pretty good. Would you agree with that, Reed?
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, what you're looking for is the level of service that they offer versus the price. Some CPAs are very expensive, but they offer a very high level of service, and they are very expert at certain things. Others are less expensive, but maybe they're more general, or they just don't bother to answer your phone calls, and they'll get back to you next month. Our firm is excellent, and you certainly are able to use our firm, but you do not have to, of course. Even if you set up a structure with us, you're not required to use our firm. You can certainly use whoever you're comfortable with, but if you would like, we can certainly make available some time to answer questions, and for you specifically and for you personally, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. We'd love to consult with you. We'd love to help you in any way that we can. But in recognition of the fact that bookkeeping is a tedious thing, and it's not something that you probably want to do as a business owner, we've built a bookkeeping package. It's as little as $99 a month to get your bookkeeping done. And our tax returns are very competitively priced. Our CPA is not expensive, and he's excellent. So, we're going to be highly competitive in these things, and we'd love to have your business, but we don't, we recognize that maybe, it's not a good fit for you, or maybe you already have other arrangements set up that work better, and that's fine. Everybody is unique, and, the best thing that we could do is just talk with you about your personal situation and then make our best recommendation, and then it's up to you. Now, let me answer the big question. How do I get a U.S. bank account for the business? And the answer to that question, actually I'm going to tease you for just another minute. Somebody asked a question a second ago. I see the question has disappeared. Somebody's asking, why do I need a U.S. bank account? Well, we've talked about that this entire seminar. If you have a U.S. business structure, an LLC, a corporation, something like that, then you're going to want that business account so you don't commingle your funds. You've got to keep that account separate. And so that you can use it to buy product. If you're talking about having it be in U.S. dollars, right? You're not converting it back to pound sterling or euro or a Canadian dollar or Aussie dollar or whatever, pesos, whatever. You want to avoid having to pay the conversion to get the money out of Amazon into your home currency, and then pay the conversion again when you're sending money, from your business back into the U.S. or to China or wherever you're buying product from. So, you avoid a bunch of overhead and expense related to the conversion costs of currency and moving the currency around the world too. But it should be rather obvious also that on a bank account you want a debit card, and you want to lodge the debit card with Amazon. You want to put the bank account in the U.S. with Amazon so that you get paid in U.S. currency. You can, of course, use the debit card to buy things all over the world and have your U.S. business pay for it. I mean, why should you have a U.S. bank account? The reasons run on and on, but the question is, how do you get one without flying here? And the answer is, if you set up an LLC with us or a C corporation with us, we have an arrangement with one of the largest banks in the world where you can be set up as what they call a key executive of the business. And they are allowed to set up key executives without having the key executive personally appear at a branch of the bank inside the United States. This bank has over 3,000 branches in the U.S. It's one of the largest, and we are happy to help you get set up with our private banker who will contact you directly and will email the account information to you, and you just email back a scan of your passport and your driver's license. There's one caveat. It does have to be an English-speaking country. You need a driver's license in English. So UK, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, those are all good. We are working right now on being able to accept other forms of identification that are maybe like a debit card or a credit card or something like that. We may be able to do that too. But we already know, we've been doing this for our clients for some time now, helping them get U.S. bank accounts set up without having to appear by doing it via email. And no, we don't end up with your bank account. No, we don't end up having access to your account. We don't have the login. We don't get your debit card. We're not in the middle of that. It's between you and the bank. We just get you, set up with the banker at the bank who knows how to do it. If you walk into a branch, they can do it. But if you were to call from wherever you are and just call a random bank in the U.S. and ask them, how can I set up a bank account without showing up, they are not generally equipped to be able to answer that question. All right. Some people have been asking how much does the service cost. They're all different. Each type of company or corporation or structure is different. The bookkeeping plans are different, but they're not expensive. Okay, you can set up companies for a few $100s and have them include your first year of registered agent service, your first year of of all the corporate filings, get all your bylaws, and have it set up by a real attorney who actually knows how to do this stuff and sends you all the information, and will continue to coordinate with you in the future when it comes time to file your annual reports and things. We'll actually do it for you if you want. It doesn't cost very much. And specifically regarding the bank account, if you set up a company with us, then there is no fee. We don't charge anything to get your bank account set up. It's part of the package. You get the bank account and the debit card as part of the package when we set up a C Corp or an LLC with you. And again, we don't have access to it. We're never in a situation where we control or own your bank account unless there's a specific reason why you want us to. And in that case, we could, but we prefer not to. All right. Questions. What questions do you have? I am ready to take questions for the remaining few minutes here.
Well, Reed, we have quite a few questions, so
bring them
knock
on.
out as many as you can. I don't know when you're scheduled. I know you are a busy man, so let me know if we have to cut this off at any point, and we'll just pretty much cruise through the questions and get as many as we can.
Okay, we'll cruise until I have to run, but let's go.
Sounds good. All right, so I'm going to start with some simple ones, and I'm actually going to start at the bottom with some of the things we were just talking about, and then once we get through those, I'll jump into some of the earlier questions here.
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
a shout out to one of our current clients who's on with us who says thanks for sorting it out.
Oh, yeah.
You're welcome, Michael. It's always good to talk with you, and I know we've set up a bunch of stuff and bookkeeping and everything else for you, so we're glad that you're here and glad that you're on board with us. Go ahead, Will.
Yes. And yeah, absolutely. A couple of the first couple questions that are coming in are actually about that bank account, the key executive, which, guys, this is an amazing discovery that Reed has made here, and I give full credit to Reed for finding out about this. It is very difficult for international sellers to open up US-based bank accounts without traveling over here. So this is just an incredible thing that you found here, Reed, and of course we have a few questions about it. So,
all right.
Steve and Michael are both asking, if they don't have driver's licenses, what are there other documents acceptable, maybe a passport or something?
Well, a passport is required plus one other identification document, and that's generally a driver's license, and they want it to be in English. So the question is, can you get an English language version in the country that you live in? And if not, can we use some other alternative besides the driver's license? So, for example, a debit card or credit card, which is certainly a valid form of ID when coupled with your passport. We're working on that. If that's a situation that you're in, I'd love to hear from you. You can, of course, reach out to us here at FBAprep.com. You can go right to the website. And in fact, I want to show you the website briefly. If you get on the website for FBAprep.com and you just scroll right down here, it talks about a lot of the services. We have all kinds of other services that we offer for logistics and returns and removals and warehousing and third-party fulfillment and things. But keep going, and it says complete monthly bookkeeping and accounting. And if you take a look at this, you'll see that we have sales and income taxes, review and financials, and foreign tax help. We have all these kinds of things. All you have to do is just click the little Get Started Now button. It's going to take you to a little form. You fill out the form that goes to Ayana. Ayana handles all of our scheduling, and she will schedule an appointment either with me or with one of the other, our lawyer or one of the other members of the FBA Prep team. Okay, she will set up an appointment, and then we will be able to talk with you individually about your particular needs. So Whether that's you're living in a non-English speaking country and you need to get a bank account, we'll find a way to get that done for you. But we know for sure we can do it for English speaking countries because we've been doing it quite a bit.
Okay.
What's the next question, Will?
Awesome. And I have just a ton of questions coming in. So guys, I'm sure we're not going to be able to cover all of these questions, but we will. I'll try to get some of the kind of core main questions here.
How do we contact the CPA firm? I'm seeing that one come up.
Yeah, so the CPA firm, the CPA firm, our CPAs actually work through FBA Prep now. So you guys can actually just get in touch with Reed, Ayana, anyone at FBA Prep, and we're going to essentially put you in touch with the best possible CPA for your situation. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Reed.
That's right. You just reach out to us and let us know your situation, and we will set up an appointment to discuss it with you, figure out what the best situation or what your needs really are, and then from there we can take that and start hooking you up with the correct people, the right bookkeepers, the right CPA, the right lawyer, and so forth.
Cool. And Julie, of course, wants to know how much does the service actually cost. So if we're going through FBA Prep, setting up, can you talk about setting up the LLC and setting up the key executive bank account? And I'm sure some of this is going to be, it depends, so can you kind of give some sort of ballpark on those?
Well, yeah, costs usually for an LLC or an S corporation or a C corporation in the ballpark of around $600, and that includes your first year of filings, your registered agent fee, and everything else. And then to maintain that, it's usually around $200 a year if you do it in Wyoming. It could be a lot more expensive than that if you go in other states, like, for example, Nevada. A lot of people think Nevada is a great place to go until they realize they got to pay $300 or $400 a year just for the business license in Nevada, which is required, and then they also have to pay for the registered agent fee, the annual report fee, and this fee and that fee, and it ends up costing them several hundred, maybe almost as much as $1,000 and sometimes more, just to register and maintain the registration of their business every year. So we choose Wyoming for a lot of reasons. Somebody also asked a question that I was going to answer and it kind of dovetails with this, and that is by getting a bank account in a city, in a state, or inside the United States, does that automatically make you qualify as having a nexus? Nexus being a sales tax term. It's not in the scope of this particular presentation, but let me tell you this. If you have an LLC or a C corporation or any other entity and you're doing business in the United States, you do need to be aware of sales tax issues. A lot has changed in sales taxes over the last year, and when you talk with us about your business, that's one of the things that we're going to discuss. Whether you have Nexus, if you do, how you're going to deal with it. Are we going to have to file sales tax returns or not? Most of the time, you will not need to, and we can show you how to not need to. So, all right, more questions.
Yeah. Matthew and Michael are asking additional questions. Is this type of ID okay? Is this type? So, guys, like we said, there's a lot of forms of ID out there. We can probably, no matter what your situation is, I'm sure we can find 2 pieces of identification that will be acceptable. So just assume that you have some ID that we can use, and when you're ready to get this set up, just reach out and we can work on that.
Yeah, and potentially an international driver's license may work. I have to confirm that with the bank that they will accept that, but let's assume for a minute that if you have a driver's license in one country or another that's not an English language driver's license, that you can go get an international driver's license. It shouldn't be expensive. I know you can get them here in the United States for less than $100 at the AAA. You just go down there and give them your regular driver's license, fill out the form, and they give you the international license. So that may work. I will check with the bank and find out. But yeah, for specific kinds of IDs and so forth, that's going to be unique to the country that you're in. Let's talk about that individually when we have our opportunity to chat. Okay.
All right, great. Christopher has a question here. Is there a difference between getting a U.S.-based bank account versus a bank account in your home country that has the U.S. dollar denomination on it?
Is there a difference? Yes, of course. If you have a U.S. denominated account in a foreign country, then of course you're not paying for currency conversion, which is nice. But you also are going to have a little bit harder time if you want to sell your business, and you may have some issues with wiring out of your country back into the United States, but wiring from the United States back out of the country and spending a lot of money in wire fees back and forth if you're buying product inside the United States to sell in the United States. For example, anybody selling supplements or creams or anything that you ingest and so forth. If you're selling it in Amazon.com, you want to buy that inside the United States so that it'll meet all the FDA regulations, generally speaking. And you're going to spend a lot of money in wires. So for the most part, I think it's a good idea to have a U.S.-based bank account for your business. Now, if you don't have a business in the U.S., if you're selling on Amazon.com using your Australian limited company, for example, and you're using an Australian U.S.-denominated bank account, then that's fine. You can do that. You just have to file an 1120 corporate return for the U.S. business, and you need to get an EIN, and our CPAs can help you set that up and file correctly. But when it comes time to sell your business, what you're going to be selling is your Aussie business, right, that happens to be selling on Amazon.com. Particularly if you build a brand or if you sell lots of product and you want to build up a brand and get it to the point where you want to resell it, it just makes sense to spend a few $100 to have it compartmentalized so that it's easy to sell and maximizes your liability protection inside the U.S. So there's some good reasons for it. Obviously, it's something to talk about for your individual situation, of course.
All right, perfect.
Okay, Will, what's next?
Yeah, and I do want to say really quickly for everyone, I know when I first got started in business, I thought I needed to know all of this stuff. This is definitely the type of situation where you want to get a trusted advisor, honestly. I know a lot of people are on here right now because Reed, it's just incredible how much the depth of knowledge you have with all of these different technicalities and exceptions. It really is incredible. So I just want to encourage people, this is one of the #1 tasks that you want to outsource. Like, you do not want to be your own accountant. You don't want to be your own bookkeeper. These are some of the first things that business owners outsource. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to master every single thing that's being talked about. You just need to know the basics and get in touch and kind of know what to look out for, when to reach out, and what questions to ask. So just something to keep in mind, because this is just incredibly high-level stuff. So let's see. I got lots more questions for you.
What's funny is, just let me just make one quick comment here. When you set up your business right, all kinds of things become possible. You can borrow money. You can go get business partners. You can sell part or all of your business. You have so many things that you can do, and then if the worst happens and you have a death, or you have a significant lawsuit that comes against the company and things like that, then you're prepared because you prepared in advance. That the best time to do things is in advance. The best time to buy insurance is before you need it. The best time to set up a company is before you need it as well. And since it's we're all in business to make money, we're all in business to grow, we're in business because we want to be in business. Let's do it right, shall we? Set it up right. Let's set it up so that when we have a goal and we reach the goal, that new doors open for us and we're not limited by our lack of proper preparation in the past. And that's kind of how we look at it. Why bother going through all the process of building a business if you're just at the end of the day, you're going to end up saying, I want to sell my business, and you can't, and you got to shut it down, or you don't want to be in that situation. You want to think it through and get good advice from the beginning, and begin with the end in mind, and be intentional about the way you do things, so that those doors will be open to you in the future, and that everything will be protected now.
Right. Great point there. Morthy has a question, and guys, we have a massive amount of questions right now, so I'm trying to combine a lot of these questions, so make sure you guys are paying attention, because there's a very good chance that your question is going to get combined with someone else's. So Morthy here had a question on state sales tax. Can you give just a general rundown of kind of how FBA Prep approaches sales tax, and if we can help with that, what we look at? Because I know sales tax is an industry in and of itself, and just a whole different abyss that we don't want to fall into. But I know a lot of people here do have questions about how to get up with how to get set up with sales tax. And so can you talk about some ways that FBA Prep helps with that?
Sure, of course. So if you take a look at what's happening in the United States right now and the direction things are going with sales tax, there are questions about nexus, which we brought up that word earlier. That means, do you have a large enough presence in a state that they require you then to pay, to collect and pay to the state sales tax for all product that's sent to people in the state. So for example, if you have a nexus in Pennsylvania, then everybody in Pennsylvania that buys from you, you have to pay Pennsylvania the sales tax, right? If you have a nexus in Arizona, same thing applies. The question is, what constitutes a nexus? Or what point do you have enough of a presence in a state that you have to pay? Well, the states obviously have their own view of it, and you as a business owner have your own view of it. And oftentimes people that live outside the United States, they just say, screw it, I'm not going to pay sales tax. Well, it turns out that there's some significant things happening on the sales tax front. There are many states who are now cutting deals with Amazon, and they're getting information. They're coming after those sellers on Amazon that have been dodging it or not paying sales tax, including foreign owners, things like that. There's a lot happening, but don't let it be scary to you. There's a lot of positive there. I don't have time, literally I don't have time to go through all of that on this webinar, and maybe, Will, this is a subject for another webinar, I don't know, something we can do in the near future. But from the standpoint of sales tax, I would just tell you that you need to get good advice. Now, when you say it's an industry in and of itself, it certainly is, and there are companies out there that will scare the hell out of you and make you decide that all you're going to do is sit there and pay them to handle sales tax for you. There's no real need to do that. I mean, I just took care of sales taxes for some of our businesses that are on an annual sales tax plan. It took me about 30 minutes per company, and we have a number of companies, but it took me about 30 minutes per company to calculate the sales tax, file the return, and pay the payment by ACH from a U.S. bank account. Done. It's not like it's a super huge deal. It's easy enough that we can help you with it. It's easy enough that our bookkeepers and CPAs can do it for you if you want. But the main thing is you want to decide if you're going to pay, and if so, where. And if you have a requirement to pay, and if so, where. So those are questions, and I'm sorry to bring up more questions than answers, but again, every circumstance is unique. Every person's situation is going to be different than the next guy. So it's the type of thing that we want to talk with you about on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. You really want to be careful with where you get that advice from. There's a lot of, honestly, CPAs out there that just go, err on the safe side. A lot of them don't, because sales tax is a very complicated area. A lot of them don't know everything, so they err on the side of safety, and they say, you know what, pay a bunch of sales tax. It's really important to go with CPAs who kind of have the minimization of sales tax in mind as well, or else you're just going to end up way overpaying. In my opinion.
Yeah, what are you paying for? If they're not helping you to minimize taxation and figure out how to best set things up, then you got the wrong guy.
Yeah, exactly. I
got a couple questions here I see on the screen that I can just answer, just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, go for it. I'll try to combine some of these other ones.
Okay, so one person is saying, since I live in the UK, is it better to set up my business in the US to avoid some of the restrictions of selling in the US, or in the EU? I mean, is it better, are there more opportunities to sell in the US? Well, obviously Amazon.com is bigger in the US. The online world is more robust in the US than any other country in the world. So yeah, there are certainly opportunities, more and better opportunities inside the United States than most other places in the world, and certainly fewer restrictions than some other countries, more restrictions than some other countries. But obviously opportunity is excellent here, and so I would certainly suggest that you look into it. If you're only selling in the EU and you decide you want to sell in the US, Amazon.com is a great way to get started. Somebody else asked, can a Canadian corporation own a US LLC? And the answer is a Canadian corporation can own anything, right? It can own real estate, it can own inventory, and it can own shares of a partnership, shares of a corporation, whether it's foreign or domestic. It certainly can. So you can set that up any way you would like. Somebody's asking what's the best way to wire U.S. dollar to pound sterling via company-to-company bank account. Well, it's not necessarily the best thing to do to wire U.S. dollars to a bank account in pound sterling, but if you need to do that, you just send an international wire, and what you're looking for is a bank that can do it and can do it for a reasonable fee. Obviously, you could take a look at like PayPal's and other potential ways of doing that, but the best, quote-unquote, best way is the one that costs the least, I think. Do you need to have a U.S. address for your company? And the answer is, well, you don't need to have a U.S. address for your company if it's outside the U.S., but if you're going to set up an LLC or an S-Corp, a C-Corp, anything inside the U.S., it will need a U.S. address, and we can help you get that.
Yeah, and Reed, that actually piggybacks on another question I just had. Steve asked, to sell on Shopify, you need a U.S. address, and it can't be a P.O. box. Is that something that FBA Prep can help with as well?
Well, if you set up a corporation with us, then you get a registered agent that has a physical U.S. address that cannot be a post office box, and so you could certainly use that registered agent's address, or you could use one of our addresses. We have a presence in states of Utah and Florida in terms of warehousing, so we can be on the west side of the country as well as the east side of the country. And there are other organizations out there that have physical addresses that are available to you that you can sign up for. Street addresses that are not P.O. boxes, but there are lots of ways to skin that cat, and what's the best way for you is something we probably should talk about for your particular circumstance. Somebody else is asking, can currency fluctuation be treated as an expense? So you're asking me a tax-related question there, and I would say if you're inside the United States and you have currency fluctuations, then certainly that will impact your profit and loss statement, either by reducing income or increasing income, or by reducing or increasing expense, however your CPA chooses to take the deduction. Somebody else is asking, does it mean that an LLC is probably the best option for a newbie like me? Great question, Kevin. Is an LLC the best option for a newbie like you? And so what I've said, and I'll say it again here several times if I need to, you make that decision. But if you want to talk about it, we can take a look at your circumstance and make a recommendation. An LLC might very well be the best for you, or it might not. It depends on if you have a business partner or not. It depends on where in the world you live. It depends on if you're going to be filing a personal income tax return in the U.S. already or not. It depends on what you plan to do with the business in the future. It depends on a number of things. What you already own. Do you have a number of businesses already, or is this your first one? So, I mean, there's a lot of questions to think about, and a lot of different considerations there. And so what we would want to do is talk with you about that unique situation for you. Okay.
And then that actually piggybacks well with another question here too. When do you think is the right time for a foreign seller to start thinking about this? Is it after that first product is up and selling consistently, or what? I know it does differ quite a bit based on the situation, but if you could give a general kind of ballpark, would that be a good time to reach out to FBA Prep and start thinking about these things?
When you're first starting up, you mean?
Yeah, what's the milestone, I guess? What's a good milestone where people would say, all right, I should, start thinking about this?
Well, obviously before you establish an Amazon.com Seller Central account, because once you do, you can't change the tax ID number. So, for example, if you set one up under your Social Security number or your ITIN, then you can't change that moving forward. You'd have to start over. So you want to do it right from the beginning in terms of the corporate structure, getting the correct type of tax ID, whether it's a Social Security number or an EIN or an ITIN or whatever. And then, once you set it up correctly, then it's really a no-brainer after that. If you do it right, it's really not hard. But, if you wait until after you set up your Seller Central account, we've had a few clients that came to us after it was too late. They had already set it up one way. They realized after our discussion that maybe it wasn't the best way, and then they had to either start over or just live with it and minimize the damage or the fallout from having made the mistake at the beginning. So early on, as early as possible, you ought to be consulting on that.
Okay, great. Let's see, lots more questions here, and I'm sure we will not be able to get to any or all of them. Earl asked about something you had mentioned during the presentation in passing. I know during the presentation you had mentioned that there is no tax on profits less than $5,000. Was that monthly or yearly profit is Earl's question? And I guess can you talk about that a little bit again, just for reminder's sake?
That's annual, and that's as per the IRS right here on this page that we put up the link to earlier. But it is the personal income tax return in the United States if you earn wages in an amount less than the personal exemption amount. And the personal exemption amount changes for various reasons, but it's usually in the ballpark of around $5,000 to $6,000. If you earn less than that in personal income, then you don't have to file. Okay?
Okay. Perfect. Let's see. So Farah has a question here. Farah has a limited company already associated with a bank account of which he is the director and only shareholder for all work-related earnings. Can he use that for e-commerce, or does he need to set up a separate one due to the different nature of the work? So for people that have a legal entity already, maybe they're consulting or something, is it okay, can you talk, I guess, the pros and cons and some of the risks of running your e-commerce business along with a company you already have established?
Sure. So let's assume that you have a company that's not e-commerce. It's kind of over here doing one thing. Maybe you're successful at that business. Maybe you're a tradesperson, or maybe you've got a consulting business or something running, and you decide that you'd like to also sell on Amazon. The question is the selling on Amazon related to the business or not? If it's an integral part, it's a big part of, or you hope it'll become a big part of your current business, then you may want to use your current business to run the Amazon business. But if what your decision is that you want to, if you want to go back to Amazon.com, for example, with your own separate business, because you want to compartmentalize it, because you want to have separate profit and loss, you want to be able to monitor exactly how you're doing in that business separate from other businesses, and eventually you want to sell it, or you want to protect your primary business from liability, or you want to have, a firewall between those two businesses for any reason, then of course you're going to want to set up a separate LLC, separate bank account, separate accounting, bookkeeping, and everything. So bottom line is you want to go take a look at the circumstances, and most people do set up a separate LLC or corporation for each online business of one flavor or another. There's another interesting thing too. If you have a Seller Central account on Amazon, you can only have one, but a C corporation can have a Seller Central account, and another C corporation can also have a Seller Central account. So if you needed to have multiple Seller Central accounts, one of the ways you can accomplish that is by having multiple companies, each company owning one. So just a couple of little tidbits there for you.
Okay, awesome. That's what they're looking for. Tidbits, good tidbits. I forgot who it was, but someone asked me here about liability insurance. Is that something FBA Prep can help with as well, or would that just be kind of general consulting advice, and is that something that they should go through FBA Prep for?
Well, there's two kinds of liability insurance that I would, want to have that discussion about. So let's be clear on which one we're talking about. It's general liability, and then there's special liability such as product liability. Okay, so if you're manufacturing something, I used to be in a business where we manufactured large products that cost like $40,000. We had obviously we had liability insurance for the business, but we also then had product liability insurance, which is what happens if the product fails and hurts or kills someone, and as a result of a design flaw. Okay, general liability doesn't cover that. That's specific, special liability. So it really does depend on the kind of business as to which kind of insurance you need. If you're manufacturing things, then you need generally special liability insurance, product liability insurance usually. If you're only just running a general business, an office, or maybe an online business, something like that, then general liability policy may be a good idea, it may not. This is the type of thing that we can talk with you about, and more importantly, put you in touch with a good insurance agent who can ask you the right kinds of questions to determine whether you're even able to be covered by a product liability policy. They don't just hand them out like candy. You have to qualify, just like life insurance. You have to qualify. You have to be in relatively good health, and have an exam in many cases and things like that. So really, that's the type of thing to ask your insurance agent. And if you don't have one inside the United States, maybe we can give you a referral or two.
Right, and I think most people are probably actually asking about general liability insurance, correct?
Most people are, but a lot of people think that general liability insurance covers them if they have a product that they manufacture, and it doesn't.
Okay.
It covers them if somebody slips and falls and cracks their head open on the floor of your warehouse. It covers you for things, other types of mishaps and maybe employee dishonesty if you have employees who steal money and things like that. But general liability is a much different thing than product liability, and your insurance agent can help you sort out the differences and figure out which kind of insurance you should carry.
Okay, great. Let's see what else I have for you, my friend. So I have a couple questions from people in the UK here.
Yeah.
And so I know you talked about this, but it's an interesting point, so I think it's worth making the point again. Matthew asked here, if we set up an LLC in the U.S., will we have to pay taxes in the U.K. and the U.S.? He said, I know you may have covered this already, but yeah, so a refresher on that. And then also a lot of people in the U.K. kind of just, wondering what's the next step for them? What's the first step for someone in the U.K.? So I guess can you go over really just the whole U.K. setup one more time since it's a little unique?
Yeah, sure. So all right. The initial question was, if we set up an LLC in the U.S., do we have to pay taxes in the U.K. also? So let's identify the parties. If we, that would be people, let's say a partnership of two people, set up an LLC in the U.S., so the LLC is then set up, will we have to pay tax in the U.K. as well? All right. So who's the we? In the matter of setting up an LLC, remember an LLC itself does not pay taxes in the U.S. Okay? It doesn't pay taxes in the U.K. either. What you're asking is, do the owners, do the partners have to pay tax in the U.S. or in the U.K.? And so there is a tax treaty that covers that. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you have to seek the advice of your accountant, chartered accountant or whatever in the U.K. Or Canada or India or wherever you are in the world. There will be a tax treaty that covers that for the most part, and will determine whether you are better off taking money from the U.S. business into your personal tax return and paying taxes in the U.S. because the tax rates are lower or more advantageous, or whether you want to transfer that money into the UK and pay taxes there because the tax rates for you are lower or more advantageous. Those are considerations. But you generally can avoid double taxation. What we mean by that is paying tax in the US and then paying tax on that same money again in the UK. You can generally avoid that, yes.
Okay, perfect. And I got a real easy one for you here. What is the last date for filing annual returns for a C Corp? And I'm assuming that's just the same deadline as everybody else. But can you talk, I guess, about some of the filing deadlines and things like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, filing deadlines generally are March 15th and April 15th, depending on the type of entity for the previous tax year, but you can get an automatic 6-month extension so that instead of March 15th, it's September 15th. And instead of April 15th, it's October 15th. But for those of you who are inside the United States, if you're going to make a sub-S election, in other words, if you're going to take your LLC and make it act like an S-Corp, like what we talked about earlier, then you're going to need to make that election within the first 75 days of the year in which you are doing the S-Corp. So for example, for 2017, you need to do that before March 15th. So bottom line is that's the type of thing that you need to talk to your CPA about. Usually it's a good idea to extend those tax returns, and usually it's an even better idea to get advice on the best corporate structure for you so that you know what type of entity you're going to do, and therefore plan accordingly on your deadlines and your elections.
Yeah, that's something you definitely want to work with your CPA on. So, Michael here has a great question. He is in the UK. Does he just need one CPA to cover all international taxes, or is he going to need a separate CPA for the US and the UK?
Well, you're going to want to have a CPA for your USA, and you're going to want to have a chartered accountant or a separate tax specialist in your home country. And what's going to happen is after you make all your decisions and set everything up the way you're going to set it up, then you'll file your tax returns, whatever flavor of tax return that may be, inside the United States, and then you're going to take that tax information and hand it to your home country accountant and say, here's my U.S. business. You know, whether you're doing home country accounting for a limited company or other structure, or whether it's for you personally, either way, you're going to just hand it to your accountant and say, here's my U.S. stuff, and then they will factor that in. But make sure you're dealing with somebody in your home country that's familiar with, you know, foreign tax matters. If you're not, then you may want to ask around and find somebody who is.
Yes, definitely. And obviously,
somebody also asked. Somebody said that they're functioning outside the U.S. but have set up an LLC in the U.S. in this past August. It'll be their first time filing. Really don't know where to begin. What would your advice be? What my advice would be is to get a hold of us. Email Ayanna at fbaprep.com or go to fbaprep.com. Like I showed you a few minutes ago, right here, fbaprep.com. Scroll down to the monthly bookkeeping and click the Get Started Now button, and put that information in, or tell Ayanna over the phone that information, or email it to her or whatever, and set up a quick consultation so we can discuss what the best situation is, because it really does depend on whether that LLC is going to be considered by the IRS as a disregarded entity, sole proprietorship, or a partnership, or a corporation. And I don't know the answer to that until after you and I talk. So that's why you need to get a hold of us.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And I know you have to take off pretty soon here, Reed, so we'll try to get one or two more questions if you have the time.
Okay.
All right, perfect. A couple people were asking about the meeting minutes and things like that. So, I think when people are talking about setting up an LLC, setting up a corporation, you always hear these things about meeting minutes and things like that, board of directors meetings. Can you talk about how simple that stuff can be? Because I think that intimidates a lot of people.
Yeah, no problem. So you do not need to go get a copy of Robert's Rules of Order and read it cover to cover, latest edition. You don't need to do that. If you have a corporation, then you do need to have an annual meeting, which means you have to send a notice to the shareholders and the board of directors and have the meetings. And at the meetings, one person will be a secretary, and we'll just keep minutes. Minutes just means a record of what was discussed. And if there are any resolutions, for example, you might, as a company, decide that you want to start selling on Amazon. So the board of directors might take a vote. So you record that information. There are forms and templates all over the web that you can get for free that have meeting minute forms and templates that talk about and have all the official language and things for resolutions and whatnot. But that only applies to corporations. Remember I said earlier, LLCs don't need to have those kinds of meetings with minutes. Although you certainly can, it's not required. What I do, I have a corporation, and we have a board of directors meeting on a cruise ship once a year. My wife and I go on a cruise, and I literally take a piece of stationery letterhead from the ship and handwrite the minutes on that one page. So if there's ever a question as to what was the purpose of the cruise, it was to have the board of directors meeting. This is a nice little touch, but it means that I get to write off the entire vacation too. So the company sends me on a vacation every year. That's a nice perk. But the bottom line is that the meeting minutes just say this, the date at the top, the name of the company at the top. The meeting is called to order. We have all of the board of directors here, or we have a quorum, and then we resolve to continue doing business.
If you don't mind or think that there's anything too proprietary about it, Reed, I actually have one of the meeting minutes from FBA Prep open here. I can
Yeah.
show people really quick just how simple this is, but if you think that's inappropriate for any reason, I can leave that out too.
Well, you know, I don't know if we want to show them our own because it's specific to us, but there are, I'm telling you, thousands of examples of them online. Just go pull some. Just look at them.
Yeah, and guys, it's literally a piece of paper that just says the meeting was called to order, the appointment was accepted, we talked about things, meeting adjourned, signed, that's it. So don't overthink this stuff. I know when you're looking and it says you need these board of directors meeting, like if you're a sole owner of this company, that can be confusing and intimidating. Keep in mind that it's quite literally just opening up a Word doc, typing some things in, couple, 15, 20 words, and you can call that meeting minutes. So don't let that part intimidate you from all of this. And Reed, we might have time for one more question here. I'll try to get a short one here. Now, this is actually one that I had a question about too. So Kevin, great question here. He said, is a international tax ID number the same as an employer identification number? Can you talk about the difference between an ITIN and an EIN?
Sure. An EIN is issued to a business. An ITIN is issued to a person.
Okay, perfect. So that's about as short and sweet as an answer gets. We do have a lot more questions here, but like I said, guys, this is taxation, legal structures. There are just so many variables in this area that we're talking in right now. I think we answered pretty much as many of the overarching questions that we could. A lot of people do have specific questions for their situation. Guys, I would have to recommend just getting in touch with FBA Prep. And even if it's not FBA Prep, get in touch with someone to talk about these more specific issues. Of course, I'd recommend FBA Prep because these CPAs are pre-trained and have been doing this for years. They know what to look for. So there are a lot of personal questions that we won't be able to get to today. But I think we got most of the overarching ones. So Reed, I think we can pretty much call that a wrap for today because I know you got to get out of here in 2 minutes. Do you have any kind of parting words of advice, I guess, for the everybody that's starting these Amazon.com businesses? Any parting words of advice to kind of tie this all together for them?
Yeah, to tie it all together, probably, and I know it was long and we covered a lot of ground, but really go back to the beginning. Take a look at the questions that we initially asked. Okay, so how do you minimize taxes in the USA in your home jurisdiction? How do you maximize liability protection? How do you facilitate transfer of your assets? Do I need an LLC or corporation? We asked a lot of questions at the beginning. And go, listen to the replay and realize that during the body of that replay, we've answered most of those questions. Sometimes we answered them by saying, you probably ought to check with a professional in your home country and then check with us. Sometimes we just answer the question directly, and other times, looking at the IRS website or the FBA Prep website, we said, go here to get more information. But bottom line is, go back and re-listen to this, and then if you still have questions, and you probably will, or if you want to take action, which is really what this is all about, knowing it is one thing, but doing it is another, then get a hold of us. We'd love to help you. We'll talk with you. We'll coach you through it. We'll answer your questions the best that we can. We'll put you in touch with the right people. There's no cost for a consultation. It's free. We don't send you a bill for talking with you. If you want us to help you, then we certainly will. We'll tell you what it'll cost and what the pros and cons are, and we'll work through your specific situation with you personally. And that's really what we enjoy doing, and thanks to Will and Startup Brothers and everybody for facilitating this, for the great intro and for the opportunity to address you. I know these are issues that many people avoid, many people just kind of put off. They don't want to deal with it. It's boring, it's long, it's technical, and it's just not where you want to be as an entrepreneur, where things are exciting and lollipops and rainbows. But this is stuff that you really ought to know. You really ought to take into consideration as you're beginning or as you're growing, scaling your business. And if you just take a few minutes to go through this and then take a few minutes to set your business up right, then you can put it all behind you, you can forget about it, and you can move forward in your business knowing that you got your bases covered, you're legal, you're lawful, and you're set up so that those doors are open for you in the future when you want to sell, and if anything bad happens, you're covered. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what I hope we've accomplished today, Will.
I think we certainly did. This was just so incredibly both high level and in depth. I think everybody here, and you can see in the question box, people just loving this. So I think lots of people are actually waiting for me to get this replay up so they can immediately go back and watch this over again. I have to say, Reed, probably one of the most valuable sessions we've had in here because, you know, right at the beginning, too, you saw so many people saying, man, I have been dying for this information. This is what I'm desperate for. So I don't think many people are talking about this out there. And because of that, I think it was just that much more helpful. So, yeah, thanks so much for putting this all together for us, Reed. Really appreciate you being here, and hopefully you had as much fun here as everybody else did.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great, and hope we answered your question. If we didn't, then don't hesitate to send it over to Ayanna and ask her, and we'll get them answered for you there. And thank you for your time. I know time is valuable, and I hope we have given you more than what you paid for the seminar.
Absolutely. I think they did. So, yeah, guys, head over to FBAprep.com to see how you can work with Reed on actually getting these things done with your business, in your business. The thing about FBA Prep, as you guys know, we're kind of in a soft rollout right now. So I don't think, you know, in the future, the prices of FBA Prep will very likely go up. Your ability to get in touch with Reed and the lawyers at FBA Prep and actually talk to them, those people are going to be less available as we open this thing up to the public. So I'd absolutely recommend heading over there, guys. You know, right now, if you get started with FBA Prep, you'll be able to work with Reed. You'll be able to work with Chris, who's our lawyer there, and that's awesome. That's just that much better. So for any of these crazy high-level questions, make sure you reach out quick because, again, I don't know how much longer Reed is going to be, you know, manually talking to each and every person that goes through that system. So, guys, get over to FBAprep.com. You got that email address there. As you guys know, we're involved in FBA Prep as well. So if you do want to reach out to us as well, we can hook you up with the team over at FBA Prep. And with that, guys, I'm going to get over and make sure I get this replay uploaded and ready for you guys to watch pretty much instantly. Watching the Facebook group, guys, you will see this replay go up in just a couple hours here. And, of course, you have all the information on your screen right now to actually get started with FBA Prep. So thanks so much for being here, everybody. Hopefully this was, I think, looking at the question box, I think this was one of the most valuable sessions for our foreign sellers thus far. So I think everybody loved it. Hopefully you did. Guys, get out there and take action on this stuff, whether it's, you know, going back in the replay, asking those questions and kind of moving forward, or if it's just getting in touch with FBA Prep to outsource the whole thing. Get started and move forward because, like Reed said, this stuff can be really, really confusing, but once you get it set up right the first time, you can move forward with confidence and just know that you can scale this business up and know that all your bases are covered, like Reed said. So one last time, thank you so much for being here, Reed. I will make sure that everybody sees this replay and look forward to having you back in the future, hopefully, to go over some more of these subjects.
Thanks
awesome
again,
stuff.
Will.
Yeah, awesome stuff. All right, guys. Well, the replay will be up shortly. I will have the question log along with it, as well as all of these links that Reed has offered to you. So watch out for the replay, everybody, and let us know if you have any other questions. So good stuff. Thanks, guys. And I will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern for our next coaching session. So good luck. Goodbye, everybody. And let us know, either Reed at FBA Prep or us at StartupBros, let us know if you have any trouble getting started with everything we've talked about here today. Thanks, guys, and I will see you later.